fee ownership of the land, and the county essentially purchased the development rights, so to let the landowner continue to use the lands for agricultural or other personal uses. The average acquisition cost per acre over all of those lands in that cycle was $3,177. The county maintains an active acquisition list. That's a list of properties that have been put forth for potential acquisition through willing landowner participation. Everything that's done through this program throughout its history and going forward for the next 10 years requires the participation of a willing landowner. So on this map, the areas that you see in purple represent the properties that are currently on the active acquisition list. They get on that list by being nominated by a citizen or an entity, agreement by the landowner, evaluation by staff, a vote by our Citizen Advisory Board that represents the citizens' voice in the process, and then also a vote by the Board of County Commissioners. Currently, there's about 40,000 acres on that active acquisition list, and some of those properties are more actively being pursued and some are less actively being pursued, depending on landowner timelines and landowner level of commitment. Looking forward for this 10-year cycle, continuing the program, the orange areas that you see represent the portions of Alachua County that have been identified through state-level analysis, primarily completed by the University of Florida under what's called the Florida Ecological Greenways Network. And they represent the corridors in our area that are have been identified as the most important ones to try and assemble. So the orange footprint doesn't necessarily, you shouldn't look at that and say everything that's orange we're going to try to buy. It represents the areas where it's most important for us to try and buy properties that you can connect into corridors. You'll see the lighter green on this map are the properties that are owned by partner conservation entities, mostly by the state of Florida, but also by some private entities like Rayonier and other larger industrial forest landowners who have conservation easements on their property, and also independent smaller nonprofits like Alachua Conservation Trust. The darker green are the properties that the county has been able to acquire to date. And so you can see that pattern of connectivity where the acquisitions that the county program are targeting are trying to assemble these corridors that connect from each other and make these broader habitat and landscape level connections. Our focus throughout the history of the program has been the Santa Fe River corridor. It's so critically important to protect, as well as I'm sure everyone in this room understands very well. In addition, on the east side of the county, there's a statewide wildlife corridor called the Florida Wildlife Corridor that the Florida legislature has passed and prioritized, and that's the orange portion that you see on the east side of the county falls into the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And then we are also looking at a southern corridor connecting Paynes Prairie Preserve State Park, the county's Bar Hammock Preserve, which is that sort of rectangular darker green on the south end of the county, with Watermelon Pond Preserve and Goethe State Forest in Levy County to build a corridor going towards the Wakasasa Bay. So those more natural conservation lands efforts to date are being considered like a green crescent. We're loosely terming it that. But looking forward into this next 10 years, we are also bringing an increased emphasis on agricultural land protection. I inserted that agricultural photo mainly on the west side of the county and coming up through Newberry and High Springs, but that's more just to graphically represent it. With the understanding that there is a larger agricultural land footprint on this western side of the county, and some of the best and most important soils for agricultural land uses are on this side, and also extremely important to protect as a result. However, agricultural land protection could happen anywhere within the county as a method to strengthen other corridor efforts. but also protect water quality and water recharge while supporting local food production. The way that that agricultural land protection component of this program is likely to move forward, again, is through willing landowner participation, but in the form of conservation easements for landowners that want to retain the ability to continue their agricultural practices on their land, but would like to get some of the revenue from the value of that land to help with their financial planning. We will be providing expanded opportunities for those landowners to be able to participate in the land conservation program through conservation easement sale. Currently, there's 15 county-held conservation easements in place, and the one that's maybe potentially most in your local awareness is, it's a badly worded statement, but is the orange area, the large orange area at the northwestern part of the county, which is the Hitchcock Conservation Easement. That's one that we were able to acquire last year. It's over 2,000 acres in size. But also additionally, Camp Kalakwa has a conservation easement on it. And so that's another method, a different type of land use where it's still important to protect the river and protect the water quality in this area through an easement on that property. I've just inserted this map so that you could see the Florida Wildlife Corridor if you're not familiar with it. It is that state level corridor, and the area that's circled in red here is the part of that corridor that comes through Alachua County. And so that's where our efforts tie into that bigger statewide effort to provide enough habitat to protect the suite of species, native plants and animals, and particularly animals that have large home ranges like black bears, bobcat, and also all of the migratory bird species that need more than just a single footprint of land. They need a larger piece of land to continue to survive in Florida. So just to recap, that 80-20 split for the allocation of the county funding between conservation lands and parks, we anticipate to translate to about $150 million going towards conservation lands. That's both land acquisition and then also opening those lands for recreational use, and about $37.5 million going to the parks, the active parks program. And with that, I can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Andy, do you have an update on the Lime Rock? That's going to affect the High Springs area. There are 5 Lime Rock lakes that have been put on the acquisition list and have gotten quite a bit of attention from the state because of the water reservoir that's there now. It's reclaimed itself. And Andy, do you have an update on that property? It also has the Asbury Cemetery on it up in that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. The property that's being referenced on this map is just above the word Springs in High Springs. It's the purple sort of S-shaped property. We did visit that property with the landowner and with the Department of Environmental Protection's mining office, because it does still have an active lime rock mine on it, although it's active at a low level, to try and get more precise information on the reclamation requirements that would be needed in order for that mine to be closed out and for the site to be potentially safe to open for public recreational use. So where we're at right now is awaiting a response from the state DEP office regarding the reclamation components of that property.
The cost of that, the cost of what it would be to do that.
Yes,
because
correct.
I know that the Swanee River Water Management District has also allocated money towards that purchase, so they do recognize the value of
Correct.
that water body.
Yes, the Swanee River Water Management District, together with the DEP, has authorized $800,000 of bargain share or partnership funding towards the potential acquisition and protection of that property. And so we are moving towards appraisals on that property now, but still pending the outcome of the reclamation cost question.
Certainly, okay, but it is, I just wanted the folks here to know that it's still being pursued and I see the potential value, not only to the whole county, but to this part of the county too. Thank you. Okay. Big fish in there too. I've seen them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Commissioners, one of the things that I'm pretty happy about then, and are we going to get an update on the Parks and Rec Master Plan tonight? Oh, we are? Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay.
I'll comment after that.
Question is, when do the funds from that tax begin to be dispersed to the communities for our local projects? How's that set up currently? Because it's the same distribution as before, correct?
The distribution that you get directly from the Department of Revenue, it comes direct from the Department of Revenue, and you'll start seeing that. So it's effective January 1st, but the January 1st to January 31st sales tax is not remittable to the state until the end of February, so February 28th, then it goes to the state. And then the state calculates it and sends it back to everyone, so the cities will not start seeing their proportionate share that they get under the tax directly until, they should start seeing it now because it's April. Yeah, so you should start seeing it about now for the proportionate share. The share that is the municipal share that we put together, the board is going to have that discussion on the May 23rd board meeting. I almost said 25th. May 23rd board meeting to discuss how we're going to handle that municipal share.
So you probably won't even notice a break because on the 28th of each month, you get your surtax distributions directly from the state. And so by the time the old one closed out, you were still getting those distributions. And so this one will just kind of pick up. But you'll notice that your distribution will have doubled. So on March 28th, you should have noticed, instead of whatever your previous distribution was, it actually should have doubled because instead of it being a half cent, it's now a full cent. And just fun facts to know and tell that the city is expected to receive $921,625 per year. That's updated annually by the state. And again, that's half cent for wild spaces, half cent for infrastructure. So for each of those pots, that's $460,000. Sure.
Question, please. So we get an annual estimated $921,000 per year. And what's the total of that tax that's being collected? Is it 12 million that's coming?
So for you, it would be 900. So 900,000 times the 10 years, so you'd be getting 9 million.
No, I understand that part. I mean annually, the tax over the entire county,
Oh.
what's being brought in.
Let me grab my phone. I have that. So the countywide total is 56 million per year. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, good evening again. My name is Gina Peebles. I'm an Assistant County Manager, Chief of Staff. So with our last iteration of the Wild Spaces Public Places surtax, our Parks and Open Space Department, they were able to make some improvements at Squirrel Ridge Park, Chestnut, Grove, Lake Alto, and Copeland, to name a few. Just yesterday, we were able to ribbon cut a new playground facility at Lake Forest Elementary. And so beginning this weekend, that will be available to the community there in that area. And by the end of this fiscal year, so our fiscal year is September 30th, we're actually going to have an inclusive playground at our Veterans Memorial Park. And so you could see that it's a veterans theme. So you could kind of see the red, white, and blue there in the safety surface. And this is also what's called an inclusive playground. So that means children of all abilities will have elements that they can play with and use. So we're super excited that we're able to partner with the Rotary Club. We also have Duke Energy that's contributing towards this project. So moving forward, the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners, they decided that 80% of the county share of the surtax is going to be invested in conservation lands and 20% in our active parks. So over the 10-year life of the surtax, that means $37 million towards Alachua County Park improvements. So we did go through a master plan process, and that started in October of 21. Where we actually hired the same consultants that you guys are using right now, so GAI. They were the firm that we contracted to do this process with us, and then they started with their surveys in April and public meetings in May. They completed their existing park conditions review in July. Then they really started putting together the entire plan, and that was approved by the board this February. So the things in the master plan that really kind of rose to the top is providing for today and planning for tomorrow. So we have many existing parks, and they need facilities, amenities to just bring them up so that you know that you're in an Alachua County park, no matter where you are in the county. And so we want to make sure that we provide some base level services at each of our existing parks. So we'll have pavilions, we'll have some type of play equipment, we'll have some type of court sport, and we'll work very closely with the community so that they have input on the type of play equipment and court sports, et cetera, that's in their park. Also, proximity and access. We want to make sure that all Alachua County citizens are within a reasonable distance of a park. Inclusivity and safety is incredibly important. We want to make sure that all of our parks are inclusive. And so, for example, the Veterans Memorial Park playground that I just showed you, it actually has signage in both English and Spanish. It's going to have some Braille. It's also going to have some sign language. So we're really trying to make a concerted effort to make sure that people feel welcome and that there's something that is appealing to all people. And of course, safety, so are we making sure that trees are limbed so that you have real good visibility, and that the bad guys aren't hiding out in the bushes to pounce on people, that kind of thing. So making sure that our maintenance is up to par. Also natural Alachua, so I don't think at all that you're surprised that the citizens of Alachua County care very much about our natural environment. They want to make sure that there's still shade trees, that there's still natural areas for children to learn from nature. And then, of course, communication. So the department didn't do a very good job previously about getting the word out about our local parks. So we're trying to work very closely with our communications department and make sure that people know what is available to them relatively close to their homes. So this is our master plan map. So you can see that, well, it's actually pretty small, but all of the numbers are our existing parks. And then there's trees, A through K, and so those would be our new parks. So you could see where there's gaps in service, and of course the larger circles, those would be what we call community parks, so they're larger parks, so about 20 acres in size. And those may have additional amenities in addition to the ones that, things that I just mentioned, things like ball fields. And people are willing to drive a little bit further to get their kids to Little League practice and that kind of thing. And then the smaller circles, those would be more for your neighborhoods. So maybe it's a walkable distance, maybe it's something, that, of course, if I'm in the Micanopy area, I'm probably not going to drive up to High Springs to bring my child to a playground up here. I'm probably going to stay closer, to the Micanopy area, for example. And that we are working with our Citizens Oversight Board, it's called ROSCO, and they're going to assist us in prioritizing some of our projects. So the priorities that were established through the master plan process is that we want to renovate our existing parks. We want to acquire and improve new parks in unincorporated Alachua County. And we want to partner with other government agencies to provide active park amenities. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
The county parks, is there an admission fee to?
Just Post Springs. And interestingly, one of the proposals that came from this master plan process is that we consider not charging fees for the majority of the year, just during that peak season, whenever we actually have to turn people away because the park is just, it's very popular during the summer. So shortly, we'll be coming back to the board with our next fee schedule update to ask that they consider we only charge fees from Memorial Day through Labor Day, and then it's free the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the same page with where my questioning is going, because once Rum Island started charging from Columbia County, there is no free access to any of the springs around here. And so for kids and families, and we understand it's a high tourist thing, because that's part of what we contribute to the county, but families and people that live local here have no free access. And so even if there's a way for, you know, whether it's a summer school program or things like that, to have some exceptions or certain hours, something that could really provide the citizens around here, because other than that, we don't have access and we don't have a way to go. So,
And I think that's relatively easy to accommodate, you know, so long as it's not on the holidays, so the Memorial Day, the Labor Day, the 4th of July, or those weekends. So if somebody wanted to go during the week, I'm sure we could accommodate that. Me neither. No, you and 5 million of your closest friends.
Madam Chair, Gina, can you put the big map with all the circles back up?
Yes, sir.
So commissioners, a couple of things. So from a kind of a high level, you know, this is the first time that the county has actually had an active master plan for the entire county, which is really, really exciting. Commissioner Wheeler kind of led the charge with us saying, you know, can we reduce this percentage from 90 to 80? And 20% may not sound like a lot, but doubling the amount of money that we're spending is a big deal. The total plan over 10 years is 80 plus million. So we are anticipating about half of that through the sales tax. And one of the things we talked about 2 weeks ago was this realization that the state of Florida continues to grow at kind of an exponential rate. I think last time we were here, we were talking about 1,000 a day. It's actually 1,142 people a day. So that's 14.2% higher than what we even were talking about a year ago per day coming to Florida. And so we know that our citizens that are here, as new people come, if they're not kind of paying their fair share, are bearing the cost of us having to expand infrastructure and provide infrastructure, which is a good thing, providing infrastructure. But one of the things we are looking at the county level, and I would ask that you all maybe consider, is additional impact fees for Parks and Rec as it relates to new growth, paying its fair share so that the existing taxpayers aren't bearing that cost that we know is coming to the state. So that's kind of a high level. More specifically, though, if you look at that map and you look at High Springs, have you all been to Jonesville? Okay, so that's a 20-acre park, and this plan is calling for another Jonesville-type park where you see A and C, and those aren't specific to that exact location. Those are approximate locations which will provide access to the population, Alachua, High Springs, unincorporated. And so to the extent you have areas that maybe you are aware of that could be contributed for 20 acres, these are opportunities that y'all are kind of on the ground and know about. Communicate with our staff, because that's something that's important. Also, B is a neighborhood park. That's a 5-acre park. We were in La Crosse on Tuesday night. I kind of made this pitch. You know, if you know of a place between La Crosse and High Springs and Alachua that would make a good neighborhood park, 5 acres, that's an opportunity. And so I just wanted to kind of point those two things out. I also wanted to bring up to my colleagues Lake Forest. I know you couldn't make it, and you couldn't make it yesterday, but it's really kind of groundbreaking for Alachua County to have the school board allow us to invest in a playground for the school, which then is opened up to the weekends and the nights. They're maintaining it throughout the day, and then it's really an asset to that area. And I talked to the manager this morning about opportunities with us duplicating this in perhaps Hawthorne, High Springs, Waldo, Micanopy, Archer. And, I don't know really what the school system is up here, if that's an opportunity, but I think it's a good model. I talked to a couple of school board members, and they would very much be in favor of that. And so we'll talk more about that, but I wanted to kind of let you all know that as well. That's all, Madam Chair. Thanks.
How many parks are in High Springs? I know I've been to 2, the children's parks, the community. Those are the 2 that I've been.
So the Bridlewood development that was approved recently, there's actually more parks than I can count in that subdivision. All the parks are within a 5-minute walk of every home. And so there's some not regional but larger community parks as well as neighborhood parks, and there's areas for active and passive parks in there. And we just passed the roadway, not roadway as well, but the parks impact fee last year.
See, High Springs is on a roll. You guys really are. I'm telling you, I've not worried about you all in a while. And I would just like to point out to the community here, too, I represent District 2, and we each have a district. We've gone to single-member districts in terms of elections, but you'll see a commitment from this whole board for the whole county because we feel like that we're all connected anyway. That the communities are connected. And I have seen that, and I know we have seen that, as you all have been talking about with the League of Cities, how to share this money that's coming in too. So that makes me feel really good about the leadership that High Springs is, the role that you all have taken in terms of moving this forward. And I want to say, in the amount of time, this is my 2nd term of serving this district and the county. And I'm just excited to see what you all have got going on up here, all of you all. And the participation in the Wall Dogs, the community volunteers that came out to make that happen was amazing. It was nothing short of amazing. So congratulations to all of you. But just know that we're all here, to support what it is you're doing. And so just go team. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Got a question. I don't know if this question fall up on the parks or not, but have y'all considered county-wide gym? For kids to play basketball and volleyball and gymnasium, yes.
So we are currently investing $60 million sports event center that's at Celebration Point.
I hear somebody talking about it.
All right, yes. Madam Chair, as Ms. Peoples was saying, we invested $60 million between us and a private partnership in the sports arena at Celebration Point, which will have availability, when they have availability, not being used for events that rent the facility, then they will do programs and other things available for the community.
Madam Chair, may I follow up with that? Legacy Park too in Alachua. I don't know if you all have had access to that yet or not, but you've got Damon down there now. You've got somebody on the inside. Because I haven't had a lot of experience with working with Alachua, but now that Damon is down there, I feel like I will be, and hopefully you all feel that way too.
Yes, but being involved, that place is always full.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness, especially during AAU basketball season. I'm telling you, bring in, I think the last one they had 8,000 people in the area. So.
We were really the county really tried to purchase the church. Remember that effort that we made because of the gymnasium there too. We were really hoping that High Springs, you know, if we had bought that High Springs would have had access to that gymnasium there. Who is using that now? Do you know who owns that? Are they someone that we could talk to about using the facility?
We just
No?
did, we approved their site plan at our last meeting, and they're building out, and that wasn't on their radar. But I think you're talking about, we need a community center. I'm here, so as we talk about partnership projects with the wild space money, when you get to that, that would be something that, you know, the community would be very much, looking to have some help with. Because we need that sports component as well. We've lost access to the school. We used to share that gymnasium for a lot of our programs, and we don't have access to it now the way we used to.
Why?
That's a decision made by the principal. So we don't have enough. Our volleyball's full. We don't have courts. There are a lot of issues, and our rec program is booming because people are moving to the area. So there's that, and you know, things like the Rails to Trails, which we had an opportunity years ago. We missed it. I don't know whether it's salvageable at this not, but that would have been an amazing thing too. So when you get to that point of talking about those combined projects and how we do that would be, we'd love to be at the table there.
I was going to say the joint projects under the program with the municipalities, they come to us and propose what they would like to do with us for the joint projects. So that is certainly something they can come and to us and say they would like to utilize for their joint project, and then the board can consider that our share of that joint project would go into that for them.
Awesome. And I did hear Ms. Peebles reference that you all are also have a Parks Master Plan with.
Yes, ma'am. We kind of came right behind you on
Great.
the because we thought that they'd already done a lot for you, so that there was significant knowledge about the area already, and we'd had positive experiences with them doing our CRA plan. So they're doing our downtown facilities plan, and they're also doing the Parks Master Plan. We've around halfway through right now.
Great. So, I mean, I think that to that end, too, as you get that Parks Master Plan and you start prioritizing your wild spaces, public places, maybe that'll be a great opportunity to identify those spots you're talking about for those partnership projects.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
May I just ask one quick question, Debbie? The community center that you have now, is that a big enough site that you could expand on that site or not? I mean, is that the sort of thing you could expand?
So
On
right
property
now,
already
we
owned?
mainly have the Civic Center and the old school, and a large portion of the old school has issues with asbestos, so that area is shut down, and it's mainly meeting space. In the Civic Center, there's not a lot of room unless we were to start taking ball fields away.
I see.
So, but we do have some other land that it could possibly go on. It's, you know, things have gone up as far as interest rates and a number of things. So it's not necessarily the best time, but we're still trying to plan and figure it out because we know it's a need and we'd like to do something like that as soon as possible. As far as the focus groups for the Parks Master Plan is coming out as like one of the top, if not the top, need in the community that people are asking for. And it's not just High Springs, it's the whole area out here.
Is the new development that's coming a possibility for land? I know that there've been offerings of land for different projects on that piece. Is that
There's
a possibility?
there's lands for public facilities. There's some commercial land, some land for the school, as well as for a police fire station. I mean, there's still opportunities as they're going through platting, but I don't know if it's the best location because it's kind of out there a little bit, so it would restrict access to some people. We want to have it as centrally located as possible so that people not just from High Springs but the whole area can get to it and enjoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All right. I know I saw that there was a few interested citizens, and rather than have everyone wait till the very end to do all the different topics, if you all are okay with that, I was going to open this topic of wild spaces, public places, parks and recreation and conservation lands up for public comment, if that's okay with you, Madam Mayor? Okay. Are there any comments on what has been presented thus far? No? Can you come to the mic for us and tell us your name? That's okay. We just want to be able to see you and hear you.
Hi. Well,
Hi.
wasn't that much of a presentation? I just was wondering when you mentioned the lime quarry over there, if it was the, right there by 236 and I-75, is that the lime quarry? And then you had talked about it being they haven't been mining there much at all for a long time. But what would that entail, in other words, when you say it would be conservation, would it just be wildlife that's out there now, like all the gopher turtles and all the foxes and so forth, or is it something that would be accessible, meaning like a playground type situation, or just a hiking, natural?
So, I do have something to say, but go ahead.
Okay. The things that we've been talking about, the possibility of having it accessible to the public, to start with perhaps as reservation, to start so we know who's in there, because there's only one road in there and one road out, that if we set it up so it's reservation only for fishing and, you know, primitive camping and that sort of thing, that we would require paddle boats and electric motors rather than engines, you know, gas engines, because it taps right into the aquifer. And so we want to protect the area, but at the same time, of course, we would make it access. Now, that's the plan. That's the plan right now. So
I was thinking the same thing. 198th Terrace is just a little drive with a couple houses. And I was wondering, so then would it be like you're going to have facilities there? Are you having well and septic, or what are you?
So right now, we're not purchasing the property. We're still in conversations with DEP about what the reclamation would be, because mines require a lot of reclamation because they're like the sides are really steep and things like that. So I have to make sure they're safe for people, and there's a lot of requirements by the state on how.
I was trying to think how I would drop my paddle boat.
Yeah, they have to. So there's a lot of work that would have to be done, and we certainly, yeah. And dive in.
I'm like, the lime quarry looks different to me than what.
Yeah. So that they would, and the mine is responsible for doing that reclamation to their property. So we don't want to take a priced property and then be responsible for all that work and have the taxpayers on the hook for that. So we're in the process of that conversation first. Once we get through that, then there would be an assessment, but it wouldn't be. These are not active recreation spaces, they're conservation lands, so it's resource-based recreation, so it's hiking trails, paddle boarding, kayaking, canoeing, fishing, things that are more resource-based recreation rather than like a paved, like basketball courts or playgrounds or things like that.
Okay. I was
Typically.
just wondering if it's somehow tied into, which is what I'm here for, and I guess is the 236 thing, where basically they're talking about putting in sewer to the hotel.
no.
And then, it's not far from that area. So I didn't know if that was going to be already part of like bringing a sewer line down that road or anything.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to our other half, the infrastructure sales tax half, and give you an update on the pavement management system. Last time we were here, you got a presentation on kind of the foundation of what we were looking for when we were hoping to go out to the public to expand the sales tax, and our staff have done a lot of work on getting us further down the road on how we're going to prioritize roads, and we just wanted to share that with you tonight. Take it away.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Brian Kaufman, and I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I'm standing in.
Is green on? Green's on. All right. Again, my name is Brian Kaufman, and I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I'm standing in for Ramon Gavarrete tonight. I like saying his last name. That's a cool name. I've been practicing that. The board and the staff have been working really hard on coming up with a plan for the next 10 years of how we want to pave our roads in the order that we want to do it in. And this is just a few slides of a much larger presentation that the board will be seeing at the second meeting in May, when we actually kind of finalize this, hopefully. But to reiterate, of course, the voters passed the sales tax back in November, and the second half of that sales tax, 70%, the board has allocated 70% of that second half to roadways. So for this first year, we won't have the full amount because the board has also decided to take the city's share and bring that forward for the first year. So we'll be a little short on our side for the first year, but then as we go through the program, you'll see where our budget increases after that. So in 2023, we will only have $4.2 million from the surtax in our capital plan. But here we can see the revenues actually increase. The board has also increased the general fund spending, has doubled the general fund from $4 million to $8 million. So with that and some of the other gas taxes we have, this coming year we'll have almost $18 million to pave roads with. And then you can see that this carries out to 2032, so it's a 10-year program. Also in that, we're right now we're planning for our capital improvement plans that in 2028 we will have an additional boost of about $9 million. And that will come because there's what's called the Elms nickel. There's several different gas taxes, but the Elms nickel had been bonded, and its bonding will be paid off in 2027. So in 2028, we hope to reissue that bond, and that will give us an additional $9 million a year. Some additional things that the board has been taking into account as we develop this budget is 3% cost of inflation, and also we've looked at the revenue coming in. Not only the money going out is a 3% cost of inflation, but also we've capped it at a 3% revenue. Next slide, please. So how we're developing a pavement management plan is we're using a software called Agile Assets. And every single road, county road in the county has been graded. And we grade them from a score of 100, and it drops from there. So a freshly paved road would be 100, and as the road ages over the next 20 to 30 years, it's not a linear curve, and that curve changes depending on the traffic weight and volume. And but this software basically takes the condition of the road today and then projects it out. And there'll be items that we can do to help preserve that road. And this software is an optimization software. So it's basically running through options of, do I mill and resurface this area, or do I try to seal it, overseal it, fix the cracks, fix the deficiencies in the road so I can carry its age out for even longer. And so that's why we're using this, is to try to optimize our funding. As we've been going through this, one of the things the board really wanted us to look at is the inequity areas within the county. This is also, right now you hear a lot of the federal programs. The Federal Highway Administration that's providing some of the funding down to the states are also requiring all their grants to look at an equity portion or an inequity area in their grant applications. So we ran through a bunch of calculations, and I'll show you a map here in just a minute. But we found out that putting a benefit weight of 40% on the inequity areas actually helped increase the county's overall score. And that's partly because some of these inequity areas, there's been little to no work done on these roads for almost 40 years. So by putting a little more weight into those areas, we will actually help raise the entire grade or score of the county road system. So, like I said, we ran through several iterations, and it looks like $750,000 earmarked for those areas is kind of the sweet spot, as the chair said. That's kind of her term that she came up with. She said that's the sweet spot we're looking for, where we're maximizing our residential and our collector roads. So, a couple other things that we're taking into account into the software is we looked at our work order system. We have another software called CityWorks database. Y'all may use a similar one here at the city. And so our Public Works Department, when you call and make a complaint on a pothole or a rutting issue, and we go out there and address it, we keep records of that in that CityWorks database. We know how much work went into that. We keep track of our staff time and our equipment time for every repair that we do. So we can go back and look and see what it's costing us on certain roads. And so it looks like the road segments that have 15 or more work orders, and doing a mathematical calculation on it, you can tell that that's where a lot of our effort is going. So those roads will also be included in the overall 10-year plan. The one last thing that we're doing is, after the computer will spit out 10 years of roads each year, it will tell you what roads we should do first, and which ones we should do mill and resurfacing, which one we should do a slurry seal on, which one we should do more of a chip seal on. And then what we need to do is we'll look at that spatially every year and see if it may have grouped up a couple segments together. Now, the software isn't able to do that on its own, so we have to kind of do that through visually looking at it ourselves, because what we don't want to do is come into a neighborhood and fix a couple roads here and then come back 2 years later and fix 2 roads right beside it. Because of the cost of mobilization of paving equipment, you see when they do a paving job, all the equipment that comes in, and there's a big cost in moving that equipment around. We want to maximize that. So if we see where one road might be in 2028 and one road might be in 2030, well, maybe we'll put them in 2029 because they're right there together, and we'll do that road together. So this is really leading edge stuff. The consultant that we have working with us on the inequity portion, there's only 2 other communities that we could find examples of that have tried to quantify that. One of the first and easiest ways to quantify it is using the metrics from the census data, and that's what the next bullet item talks about, the different census data, but it didn't work well in our county. We pulled that census data in, and it missed a lot of communities that we knew that were lower income communities. And so our growth management department started looking at the property appraisers' records, and so they started looking at the residential improvement values and how much has been put into the properties over the last few years, and then kind of added a little buffer around there in case we missed a few of the houses. So in our inequity areas that we're fixing to see in the next map, there's roughly 1/3 of our county population in that area, approximately 90,000 people. And this is the map. So the green areas are the areas that we've designated as inequity areas, and it's a combination of that census data, and we've tried to shorten the presentation a little bit, but in our other board presentations, we've showed how that census data laid in, and then we showed, well, we're missing all these little areas in our communities because these census tracts are so big. So by taking this additional data in that the Growth Management Department has come up with, we think we have a very good plan, and that we think we've picked up all the areas. One of those is the High Springs area, as you can see in the map in the upper left corner. So things to take away tonight: there is a limited budget in this. not all the roads will get fixed over the next 10 years. Additional roads can be selected if the revenues increase. Additional roads will be selected and repaired as the county receives grants, because a lot of our roads, we are eligible for some grants with DOT. We're not as eligible for a lot of the small county grants. We had a citizen last night, or a couple nights ago, ask us about one in Levy County and why they were able to get it. But it has a lot to do with our population, that we're not eligible for the grants that the surrounding smaller counties receive. But we are able to obtain some of them, especially for safety. The board will review the 10-year list based on what they have set as our parameters. We're running those models now, and they'll be complete and reviewed at the May 23rd meeting. Good news is incorporating the equity areas raised our overall county pavement. That PCI is a pavement condition index, the rating of our pavements. Overall it helped raise that, and the most highly traveled corridors, which yielded the most work orders on our systems, will be repaired. Many of those you travel every week. Paving will start this summer. We've got one paving job getting ready to start over in the Copeland community. We're having a meeting this next week with the Copeland community to share with them the milling and resurfacing plan for that. And 23rd Avenue is another one that's coming up. So this summer, so you're going to actually start to see some work being done. And so that's our goal, is to make an improvement to the county road system, that you will see a difference this coming year.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to quickly say, I think our team at Public Works has worked really hard to come up with a model that I think has a lot of really good components to it. The first is that it provides an objective kind of look at our pavement condition and uses that as a foundation. But I think that with all of this work that we've done to think about the inequity areas and to think about residential roads versus collector roads and making sure that there's a balance there, has really created, to use my term, the sweet spot, that I think we've got a really great system. I'm excited about the list of roads, and I think that what we did do that I think is important, and he mentioned it, but I just want to reiterate it, is that we recognize that a model is still a model, and that we, the people who drive these roads every day and complain about the potholes, see things that a model can't. And so I think forcing into the model those roads that have the most complaints, the most maintenance requests, a big difference as well in terms of us every day seeing an impact on the quality of roads over time. So
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kaufman, thank you for kind of keeping it high level. Commissioners, we've had 5, 6, maybe 7 meetings, and you got about 5% of the slides, but you got all the important ones, which I think is really, really good. And so, Commissioner Ambrose, I guess I wanted to say we heard you. I heard you. He and I spoke 3 or 4 times leading up to the infrastructure sales tax on the phone. I remember each of those conversations. I remember our conversation at the brewery. And so hopefully you're seeing some of that, when we went from 4 to then 8, and we're now going to 19, and ultimately when the Elms nickel expires, maybe 28. We're not going to fix them all, but we're going to make a big dent and hopefully show our citizens that we are listening to them. We took an approach to take 70% of that half cent. I think we talked about this at the last joint meeting. The other 30% is going to go to housing. So here's my question. Have you all had your discussion on that other half cent and infrastructure and how you're spending it? If so, are you able to share that with us tonight?
We have a strategic planning session scheduled in May, and so that's when we were going to discuss that more in depth. There's been some minor preliminary discussions here and there in some commission meetings. Thus far, roads does seem to be a priority, but to have a final, what does our commission want to do, we're deciding that during our strategic planning session in May.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear any of y'all's thoughts, if you're willing to share them.
by far when I ran, it was all roads. It was all infrastructure issues that we've had. So roads are going to be a huge priority. And this, what a presentation. Thank you for that. And I appreciate the commitment from y'all helping us with this, because this is what our town needs. We've really kind of, unfortunately, it went on the back burner when we prioritized other things, and now it needs to be fixed. So that's where we're going to move forward, I hope.
Appreciate the work you guys have put in this. I mean, to change the money from general fund and everything, and staff has really looked at coming up with a system. As we go through the 10 years on this, though, I just, let's follow the process you've started to create with staff and the software. One of the variables that I didn't hear about that makes a difference on a number of roads is what's causing a lot of the significant wear and tear. So for instance, the Dollar General and other distribution centers in Alachua, and then you have a Lime Rock mine and Argos out on 235. Well, those trucks coming and going that are economic engines for the region and have a lot of people living here are causing really significant wear on those roads. Trucks loaded, going into, the wear, you can tell the difference in the wear on the sides. So I don't know whether the software takes that into account, but that might be a factor that really needs to be looked at for those bigger trucks. And then I think as government, we kind of need to look at the public money we're entrusted with too. And where I'm going with this is our reserve fund. And Commissioner Cornell and I have talked about this a little. Municipalities are required to have these reserve funds. Well, we just went through COVID, and I don't know of any municipality that tapped into its reserve fund. So really, under what circumstances would you use it? And if you look at justifications, you've got significant infrastructure that's having a significant impact on people's cars, businesses, economic development, environmental impacts with wear and tear, and the amount of fuel being used. We also need to look at maybe tapping into some portion of those reserves to help with this, because how we're managing roads, we're behind the ball. And like the presentation said, there's not enough money to do it all. So this will be an improvement, but it's still short of probably where we want to be. So what else can we be creative with the dollars? And even right now with inflation, it's like if you bond something out, yes, you're paying interest on it, but is that interest going to be less than the increase in inflation and what it's going to cost to do that job? Because if you did it sooner, you're going to have that benefit sooner. So I know it's a 10-year project, but we got to, there's capacity and everything, but I think there's a lot of things we can continue to look at to really demonstrate to citizens that we're hearing them and we're serious. So, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, so thanks for those comments, commissioners. I guess what I would say is after you have that conversation, we're going to kind of get into some details on actual roads on the 23rd, but there's hopefully going to be a lot of opportunities for those municipalities that are kind of taking that same approach. You're doing this neighborhood, how does that, we've got a lot of residential areas that are unincorporated roads where if we can work together and have some efficiencies between the municipal government and the county government, I am all for that. I think our staff is all for that, and they've heard the commission ask for that. So just keep that in mind, however y'all kind of fall out. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate. Yeah, and I guess I would just respond to say, same. If you could share the strategic plan back with us once you get there, that we would love to see it and be able to look at where those overlaps are, synergies are, and maybe align timing so that, to his point, if we're doing a road segment here and y'all have, and you wanted to do it in, we were doing ours in 2027. We might be able to get a lot of efficiency out of it and really stretch those dollars. So thank you. Okay,
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
There's a lot of new words here, Mr. Kaufman, that I've never seen before. Pavement condition index. I mean, I understand what you're talking about, and there's a whole lot of data that we're talking about. I'd never heard about it in an equity area before when it came to paving. So does that mean with a 40% added weight to an area that's considered in an equity area, if you had a road that had a score of, say, a 50 that was not in an equity area, and a road that had a score of 60, would that mean that that 60 would be addressed before the 50? Is there going to be enough rescoring or weighting for that to be manipulated in that regard?
It would be easier to think if you had two roads at 50, one in an inequity area and one in not, then the 40% is a part of a much bigger formula. So it's not just like a pure 40%. So, but the better answer would be is if I got two roads that are at 50, the inequity area road would be chosen first.
Okay.
That would give it enough that if they were both at 50, the inequity area road would be chosen first. But there is a cap on the amount within the inequity area. So not all of it will go to the inequity areas. There was a $750,000 cap for residential type roads, and so a lot more money is really going toward the collector roads, the main roads everybody travels every day. But as we ran the models, and like I said, this is Commissioner Cornell pointed out, this is a much abbreviated slideshow because the board has spent 20 plus hours on this and have seen graphs after graphs after graphs, and we just basically kind of boiled it down to the 20-minute version to give you. But the pavement index is like I said, a rating of the pavement itself, and it's comparable from one piece of pavement to the other.
Ms. White, if I could also, I think one of the things that I thought about when I was learning about this and we were looking at all those exhaustive graphs was that the creating the inequity areas, what it did is it sort of drew attention to areas that have been less invested in over time in the county, and it almost created like a curve, like in class, if you when you were in class and there would be a grade curve, and they would sort of try to smooth out the curve so that the people who weren't doing that great, you would kind of shift things along, and that this sort of does that for the inequity areas. It sort of creates a curve that moves more of their roads, those inequity area roads, into the model for consideration, if that makes sense.
And it really helped a lot of the small communities that would have been left out.
So
had
how
we
much
not done that.
of the data input going into the model has been generated by just driving the roads? What's the data acquisition?
Every road was driven.
So that's the data feed in.
Yes.
Every segment of the road over the last 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Our consultant came and drove every single road and scored it.
Well, I'd love it for you guys to come drive some roads with us. It'd be great. We could take you on a
I drive roads with Ramon
on
all the time.
on lots
They're
of
not
roads.
fun. Yeah.
Your roads all the time.
Yeah.
So
Not
you,
fun.
I don't see them on here though. That's why I'm trying to
There's no
decipher
list yet.
from. Ashley and I tried to go to the county website on Tuesday to see what was slated, and I couldn't determine.
There is no list yet.
Okay.
There is no list. The list will be coming on May 23rd.
Okay.
That's when we'll actually have a list. So there's been the only things that have been approved right now were our CIP list for this year.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to take things that were on our CIP list this year off of it and have people be like, hey, you said that road was getting paved, so we passed the CIP for this year. We continue to move forward with those roads. So those have been approved. And then we know the 15 or more, the roads that have 15 or more complaints that we forced into the system, we know those roads. But beyond that, we don't have the list of roads yet. But on May 23rd is when we'll be reviewing a list and finalizing it. So once we have that, we can get it out to folks. All right. Is there any public comment on this item?
Concern is the road that goes to the high school. 235A is over 50 miles an hour, and you're sending new young drivers down that road every morning without their moms and back every afternoon, and I can tell you, as a very skilled driver, I have had a hard time staying on the road when you don't even see it coming, and it will pull you off that road. And the other great thing is that now longtime drivers there literally drive on the other side of the road to avoid it. And so now it's almost ahead. Now, I've got young high schoolers that are having to negotiate why someone's coming down their road while they're trying to go, or to make the choice to go literally take your car down to the pavement by the time you drop on one side. I promise you, I have never been on a more dangerous road as far as I'm concerned ever than 235A, and it is literally the road that goes to the high school of our children. So that one to me should be, I don't know, maybe you already have it on list one, because if you don't have more than 15 reports on it, I just highly doubt that, because I can tell you right now, you can go on Facebook and look at people just going on and on how their cars are damaged on that regularly, and I've literally seen more than 25 people say they've called and complained about 235A. So I just wanted to make sure that was on your
It's on the list.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. So how many more years of high school do I have to worry before that happens? Okay. Thank you.
I do also want to just quickly say something, and that is that I hope that the municipalities that are encouraging this kind of economic development with large big box retailers also consider the fact that they need impact fees for their roads, so that we can actually make these roads up to the condition that a large tractor trailer truck, because the way that we would pave a road for regular county traffic and what that costs compared to what you have to build a road that can withstand an 18-wheeler is a very different standard. And so, we're going to be contending with that as we move into this, and there's going to be real questions about to what standard do we build that road. We know we've got these tractor trailer trucks and we need to build the road to that standard, but the cost to the taxpayers is pretty significant, and with no impact fees in Alachua, for example, we have a situation where we're really kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So, thank you. Speak to your other municipalities at that small cities conversations. We would really appreciate it.
Ashley, would you list?
Ma'am, you can come to the mic. I apologize for interrupting public comment.
Let
Thank
them know
you.
the new impact fees.
Just say your name.
My name is Janet Evans, and I have a public comment to make. I'm not really sure exactly how it fits into the schedule.
Well, if it's not on the roads topic, we will have general public comment for things not on this topic.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. All right, Madam Mayor, you ready to move on? Okay. All right. We also had been asked to give you all an update on our trunk radio system. So we have Chief Theus here who was going to give us a quick update on that.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Just a conversation to give you an update about the trunk radio system and the status that we are in with it. In late February, early March, the Board of County Commissioners approved the sale or the purchase of the trunk radio system, and then the City of Gainesville subsequently also approved the sale. And so since that point in time, we've been working with staff from GRU and with our consultant of Federal Engineering to arrange the purchase sale agreement. As you can imagine, the trunk radio system covers 6 different sites. There's ground sites, there's tower sites, there's dispatching consoles. There's an enormous amount of equipment that's involved in the purchase of that system. And so an extensive inventory is currently being done right now. We've met with them on several occasions at different sites to look at how we could share some of these tower site spaces that are currently in place. And along with that, our attorney's office is working with city attorneys and GRU attorneys on the actual purchase sale agreement, the language that takes place. We also are taking a look at the user agreements that all of our users will get. There's about 10 or 11 users throughout the county, different members that participate in the radio system. And I've had communication with your staff about what your cost would be on an annual basis. And it was important to us that we had the buy-in of all the users. And one of the complaints that we had as a user was that we never knew from year to year what our price was going to be. So it was difficult for us to budget. And so what we were able to do is project some of the pricing models and some of our expenses over the next 5 years and came up with a fixed price for all the users to budget for. And so that will be coming out in an agreement to y'all very soon. We've also been working on a job description for a radio systems manager that will be an employee of the county. That individual will be responsible for managing the tower sites, managing the Motorola contracts, and also as a liaison to the users out in the field. So it's a very important individual. Our hope and goal, desire, is that you're not going to see hardly any difference other than a price. You're not going to see any difference in the radio system. The reliability will be the same. The service, we believe we're going to provide a very good service for the radio system. And that is kind of our phase one of this entire project, is to purchase the radio system, have the ownership transfer over to the county on October 1 of 2023. Give us some time to get our feet underneath us, and then go into phase two, which is an expansion of the radio system. And so we will still engage federal engineering for that expansion process. They will develop scope for us as far as where we need tower sites, what is the reliability that we're looking for, and then, of course, develop a price and help us with negotiating with the different vendors, more than likely Motorola, on the radio system itself. So if you have any questions, I am certainly here available to answer them for you if you'd like.
Questions? Sir?
Questions. I'm just really glad you're doing this, because one of the things that became very unpalatable, I think, from a government standpoint, and the experiences, is previously there wasn't a service being provided. We were a customer, and they were going to charge us what they could, and it was really unfair when really what we're trying to do is provide quality public safety. So I appreciate the fact the county's taken over this, and I hope the plan is continued, that it's a service to the communities and municipalities. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Ross, another big one, you know, I mean, we started this 3 years ago, maybe, and 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, we all got the letter. What the hell happened when we got the letter? So I think this is a really big one, and from our perspective, your citizens are our citizens. And so we are now, I think, all aligned, as opposed to we're all kind of customers of a municipal service radio system. And so this is, and I think this, you know, to the city commissioner's credit, they recognize that, look, we gotta let the county do this one, because all the citizens are their citizens. So thank y'all for working with our staff. We would love to get this thing in place, and if it's possible, lower those fees. You know, that's ultimately, once we own it and the debt's paid off, we don't want to pass. You know, there's no incentive to make any money here. These are all of our citizens that are using it for public safety. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
A quick question. Commissioner Cornell alluded to this. You said that the only difference we would see is in price. I know we don't know dollars, but are we expecting the price to increase for the short term? Do we know?
I believe the City of High Springs price is $26,400, and that's a fixed price for the next 5 years. And you were paying more than that this last year to GRU, the last 2 years, and less than that 3 years ago. We tried to pick a price that was fair, and also we took a look at what our expenses were, and trying to manage that into this sort of introductory phase of the radio system. As Commissioner Cornell stated, really our goal has been, our desire has been, is to offer this as a public service to all of the users. And really, whether you're a user that has 5 radios or a user that has, 100 radios, it's still very important that we have this reliable radio system network in place. And so, in fairness to GRU, they weren't set up that way. Their system was not set up that way. Their business is not set up that way. And they got into it by default back in 1999, really when no one else would get into it. And so they've done a great job for 20 years or so to do that. But most radio systems throughout the state of Florida are operated by a county. Because of that same reason, because it's really a service that's provided to all the county residents that really we believe general fund tax dollars should pay a majority of.
I mean, knowing that you can put a number to 5 years makes it easier to plan long term. So, we're not guessing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. On the next topic that you all asked for an update on is our broadband initiative. I'm not sure who's doing this update. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We haven't really gotten a chance to interact very much, so I missed you over
Not
there.
a whole lot. Good evening,
Thank you for
everyone.
being here.
You're very welcome. I'm Jim Woodard, the broadband project manager for Alachua County. Tommy asked me to fill in for him tonight to see if I can update everyone and answer any questions. So let me begin with the last 6 months, and we'll work our way back and see where we stand after that. Tomorrow is a big day for the program. It is a submittal day for the capital projects program, funding for building infrastructure. We have 4 vendors who will be submitting for Alachua County. We have IBT Group, Cox, Windstream, and AT&T will all be submitting for parts of Alachua County. Alachua County will be divvied up amongst the vendors, and well, it's beginning now.
Do you mind if I just want to give them some context. We set aside $15 million of American Rescue Plan money to do countywide broadband. We recognize that's not anywhere near the amount that's necessary, but since then we've been participating in this larger process, and that's what I just wanted, in case some of you didn't know, that that's sort of the impetus for this conversation.
Right, and so those 4 companies are looking to build in Alachua. And in addition to those 4, Comcast is already building in Waldo. They are coming in from Bradford County, so that's ongoing currently. We have CFEC, the power company, coming in from Gilchrist County. They're going to hit the outskirts of Newberry, so that is going on. It'll benefit the areas around Newberry that we were looking at, so that's a positive for the county. Clay Electric is deciding soon, hopefully by this summer, they say, about building throughout the county. They will be building throughout their whole territory. Whether or not we or another company builds, they're going to just build to all their constituents. So hopefully that happens also. Another cable company called Metronet is coming to Gainesville and Alachua. They're a overbuilder. They build where cable companies already exist. So they plan on coming here sometime later this year. So by the next couple of years, you could have 8 companies in Alachua County building some kind of infrastructure. Hopefully that happens. All 8 may not make it, but as it stands now, that's all proposed. So with that being said, with those 4 proposals tomorrow, that will be several months before we would know the outcome of those plans. There is some overlap in all of that, whereas a couple of counties are looking at the same areas. So that will be determined by who best is suited to do the building. We are partnering with the IBT Group. They are looking at Hawthorne and High Springs. Windstream is also looking at High Springs. And so we may have a more broken up county than we anticipate now as the state decides who builds where. So it's getting interesting. In addition to that, those areas have, as I said, they pick their own parts of the county to build. And we're hoping that everyone comes through, or everyone takes this money, utilizes it, builds as they should. We won't know if that'll happen. Our company that we're teaming with, IBT, they plan to start immediately. Other companies, the Windstreams and AT&Ts, they could take some time. They have 3 years to finish these bills under some programs, 4 years under others, and 5 years under BEAD. So some of these plans could be very long-term. But still, the hope is there. In addition to them, to those plans, last November, we had submitted for Reconnect 4 for our builder. We had submitted the Archer, Micanopy, and Hawthorne areas. Since that time, Cox was awarded the Micanopy and Archer areas, which only left Hawthorne. So we're hoping that we will receive the funding for Hawthorne, but if not, IBT has submitted for Hawthorne, so it'll be covered either way. So with all that being said, there's a good portion of the county accounted for in all of this. What is left out will be determined probably fall, winter, once all the maps come in. So there's still a lot of work to do to cover everyone, but with these plans, 3/4 of the county should be accounted for. It's not all new build, whereas it's not all for people without service. It's also for people what they call underserved, the people that don't have good service. So we're looking at the under and unserved. So, and this should cover tens of thousands of folks. The final numbers are not in as the companies deem their maps proprietary until they're submitted. So the next couple of weeks, we'll have these maps coming in, and we'll have a better idea of who was left out of all of this. So that kind of brings us up to tomorrow. So any questions, be happy to answer.
Can you quickly cover what the sort of level of service anticipated is in terms of download and upload speeds, and also anticipated costs for affordable plans? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. There'll be a minimum of 100. That's the minimum. And there'll be, of course, it'll go up from there, 1 gig up and down. So it'll be everything needed, but the minimum is 100, which has to be done to receive the funding. So that's a given. The cost, all around $50 to $60. And that could vary a little. They'll have the ECP programs, which will be the low-cost programs, which will be the $30 discount. So it'll be a $20 bill. So that will be included. That's a must for all companies that go after this funding.
Thank you.
So, sure.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Got any contact at all from Hughes?
There's the satellite folks. We are not talking to them. They're not talking to us. We haven't been looking at that technology and don't want to look at that technology, really. So I
just see a lot of flyers running around from them, and I was just wondering, that's the only reason I asked.
Sure, no, I've not seen the flyers, and I'm glad I didn't get that phone call either,
Okay.
so that's fine.
Let me ask you a question. High Springs probably feels one way, but I'm wondering, is High Springs considered an underserved area? Because
Yes.
people here certainly feel like they are. I don't know in the big picture if they are.
Right, part of High Springs is underserved.
Okay.
In your Windstream territory.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, we are.
They had funding to upgrade, did not do that,
Correct.
obviously.
Yes, sir.
So they're going after new funding, and also IBT is going after funding also. So 2 companies are going after funding for High Springs.
Okay.
I'm hoping IBT gets the award. I mean, I'm not fond of the legacies. They've had time to upgrade, have not done it. With available money now, they're now coming out, but they've certainly had their time, but that's not my decision to make. But yes, most of High Springs is considered underserved.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there anything that municipalities can do in order to provide input to this process for the state? Like if they wanted to write about their experience with Windstream, is that something that the state is open to getting input in, or is it pretty much they're making the call on the territories?
Well, they definitely are making the calls. We had, gone after some input from the county. We certainly had some and have already utilized that. It's already gone with this funding. We sent some other data in November with the Reconnect 4. So we've already used some. In talking to the county, to the state, it is important, but there's no specific amount you would need, 100 letters, 50 or 10. Certainly input helped. So I think we sent enough, but at this point in time, we really don't need any more until the next round. So come summertime, when the next program comes up, we may be looking again. So, sure.
Also, I mean, Cox is here in town now, laying out their network street to street right now. I was actually told I might have service by August, 1 gig to my house. But what about public places within the county? So as you do this access to the internet, the infrastructure is fine, but like, what about, that there's internet in our parks and that's available to the public and what have you throughout, if we're really trying to provide access and equity, and in a situation like COVID, that would have been really nice, because you could go sit in a park, better than trying to park a bus idling to provide a hotspot. So
Sure, park a bus and sit at McDonald's and Starbucks for half the day, sure. That's certainly possible. That's certainly something that should be done. Now, that will depend upon each provider and what they do in their areas, but, we can certainly push that with input from you. We can require that, in fact. So those are important issues. We certainly need to address those, and if necessary, make sure we have it done. Because there's going to be areas that will be missed. We can't say for certain right now how much of the county, but there's going to be areas that we're going to have to go after. We're going to have to figure out how to service them. So either we go after it at that point, or we get the vendors to do it. But that certainly needs to be done, because I've been through those types of things there.
Well, thank you very much for that input, because I think that's exactly what I would hope, that as we're leveraging our American Rescue Plan dollars, that we're supplementing, these companies to build infrastructure, that those are the kinds of things, or if they want access to that funding and support, that we can condition those things, like the public parks. And luckily, all of our schools already have trunk systems to them, so those are great networks to build off of, I think.
Definitely.
Commissioner Cornell, you've been on this team. Is there anything you want to add to this before?
So I've been on this team. Commissioner Alfred is currently our county liaison for the local technology planning team. So the way the state has set this up is that each county, each region has a local technology planning team. I sit on the state's broadband task force, and essentially through the Infrastructure Act, the federal government has said, I think in 5 or 6 years, they want plans to where every single person in the United States has access to basically fiber. That's why no Hughes, because it's got to be 100 up, 100 down. And there are some other states that are a little farther along than Florida. Florida's pushed heavily through kind of the local technology planning teams and the private sectors to submit those plans with county support. So we've been providing support letters, and essentially each county and local area has to submit a plan that shows how we get 100% coverage in our county. So, and that means even the house down the dirt road around the corner, and there has to be a plan. That's the most expensive, obviously, but they don't want a plan where 95% is covered. They want 100% coverage. So, Florida's kind of a large state with a lot of swamps and trees, and so it's taken Florida a little bit longer than some of the other states, but we're getting there, and I think we've got a good group up in Tallahassee, the folks that FAC is working with, and so hopefully we'll start to see some real infrastructure being deployed. If Clay gets into the business, they've got electric to every last mile, and so that there's been a little bit of a delay in them wanting to become an ISP. I think they're going to essentially be forced to do this, not hopefully, but probably, and then that will be the last mile for a lot of folks, because everyone's got power, so everybody provides. There are co-ops that provide power, and so we'll see if they're ready to become an ISP this summer. Then we've got this ARPA money ready to deploy, and hopefully we can figure out where to fill in the pockets that the ones that are submitting tomorrow aren't deploying to.
Right.
So
Very good.
I don't know if that helps, but just stay close, and yeah, you're welcome.
All set. Very good.
Stacy Greco. I'm the Water Resources Program Manager with the Environmental Protection Department. I appreciate the invitation to be here today. Excuse me. So I'm going to start off with some regulatory update because it's not just Alachua County and High Springs. You've probably heard from the Suwannee River Water Management District as they work on the minimum flows and levels. And the Santa Fe River, as Andy alluded to in her presentation, is very important for the region. And there's not, it is on. Okay. I normally don't have a problem being heard. So I just wanted to provide some regional context before I talk about what we're doing in Alachua County to protect our water. The lower Santa Fe and Ichetucknee rivers, the state is going through the minimum flows and levels. It's called the MFLs, that process, and both boards will probably be hearing from the state later this year or early next year. Rulemaking has already started, and it's clear that there's not enough water for healthy springs and rivers and our current and our future growth. So the state is right now looking for projects. How can we reduce water use, or how can we recharge more water into the aquifer, or what are regulatory options to reduce water use? And that includes looking at current and future consumptive use permits. So City of High Springs, being a utility, has a consumptive use permit. So not only will the state be looking for options, here in Alachua County, we're always trying to lead the effort, and our water conservation program has really made some strides. So today I'm just going to focus a little bit on landscape irrigation and talk about why we spend so much of our resources on that, and talk about some proposed changes to Chapter 77 of Alachua County Code, because that is a county-wide code. So it already applies here in High Springs. So there are some changes that are being proposed to that. And then I'll talk about some additional water conservation opportunities and some rebate programs that I think that your residents can benefit from. So this chart shows groundwater pumping. So we all depend on groundwater from the aquifer. And public supply, that is metered water that we all use from utilities. That is our largest water use in Alachua County. If you go across the border, to Columbia County, the largest use there is actually domestic wells. If you go to Gilchrist County, agriculture is the largest use there. So every county has its different signature. So this public supply, that is largely what is used in our houses. It's also commercial, like restaurants, businesses, but really it's driven by that residential use. So this graph can look a little scary, but I'm going to walk you through it. This is showing 2021 average water use data for GRU customers that are single-family residential. And it's aggregated based on the year that the house was built. So on the far left, that's showing that houses that were built in 1915 to 1920, that in the year of 2021, they used on average about 120 gallons per day. If you go to the far side of that graph, you will see that new construction built in 2015 to 2020, that those houses are averaging closer to 400 gallons per day. And that is a big increase, and that orange line shows why. So that is the percent of new houses that have irrigation systems. So these are landscape irrigation systems, automatic, that has a timer. So this trend, we made changes to the plumbing code, and we thought that we would start to see water savings in new construction, but this trend of having irrigation is overriding all of those savings. And this is concerning, especially for water use planning. And as communities grow, we sometimes assume that we're going to use water the way we did in the past. But as this will start to creep up your average, and that will definitely change planning, because we are seeing irrigation now as a trend in all new construction, even here in High Springs. University of Florida IFAS recently published a document just to put it in perspective of how much water is used every time an irrigation system is turned on. So it's the same as taking an 8-hour shower or doing 37 loads of laundry. And that's every time the system's turned on. So right now, if someone's following irrigation restrictions, that's twice a week. If they're not following them, could be every day. So it really helps you put it into context. So in Alachua County, limiting permanent irrigation is really our goal, because we know if irrigation is installed, it will be used and it requires constant owner education and maintenance. And a lot of times homeowners don't really have a choice. You know, it's automatically installed with new construction, so they don't understand the responsibility and, you know, the annual upkeep and the financial burden that they will have. So we are proposing changes to our irrigation design code. We're going to have a public hearing that will probably be May 23rd. And in your backup materials, you have that code if anyone can't sleep tonight and wants to read that. And I'm not going to go over all of this. I wanted it to be in your backup materials. But some of the changes, one is our system. So right now, this already applies in High Springs for new irrigation systems. We are simplifying it in that irrigation contractors won't have to provide a site sketch if it's a small system. We're going to be in the Citizen Serve platform, which I think the city uses. So we actually have a meeting scheduled next week, and we can talk about some efficiencies that we might be able to achieve being in the same system. But this is the main change to the code, is that limiting irrigation for residential to 50% of the permeable area. So this means that if someone chooses to have an irrigation system, that only half of the lot will be irrigated. So half will be unirrigated. So maybe it's Bahia grass, maybe it's Florida-friendly landscaping. And on those larger lots, that maximum is 1/4 of an acre, whereas right now it's in 1/2 an acre. We've done extensive stakeholder outreach, about a year of it. So we've been having lots of conversations. The industry is definitely aware of these changes. We're also making some clarifications. One change is to have the controller outside so that staff can access it, and just clarifying who's responsible for what. If you can read these bullets, you can see that homeowners actually have a lot of responsibility for these systems, and that's why we are pursuing other avenues to hopefully make it so there is a choice for homeowners, so they're not necessarily always going to have these irrigation systems if they don't want them. Commercial properties also limiting to 50% of the permeable area, and also requiring them to inspect the systems annually. Commercial is very challenging because sometimes who's paying the bill lives in Michigan and has no idea that a $500 water bill is way too much. So we see things like this, a lot of leaks. So this will be able to help us to get those fixed. We're creating the Water Conservation Fund where if we do collect fines, they can go into that fund and we can use it for water conservation projects. So a lot of the data I'm showing is from this tool called H2O Save. And this is, GRU has partnered with the University of Florida, as has a lot of utilities across the state. It's a very powerful tool for utilities where you can look at water use data on a parcel level. This will be very helpful as the minimum flows and levels creates changes to the consumptive use permitting. There will probably be more reporting requirements for everyone that has consumptive use permits. So for example, here, the houses that are green are using about 150 gallons a day, the red 1,000 gallons a day. So this is how we target our programs. So for example, we're going to be offering irrigation rebates soon, and we want to offer them to our high water users. So this is a tool that the city of High Springs could opt into with the university. I know that some other municipalities are considering it beyond GRU. I briefly want to talk about irrigation wells. Excuse me. Tiered water rates are a very good tool. High Springs has a tiered rate, so basically you want that first tier of water to be inexpensive and everybody to have enough water for bathing, cooking, cleaning. And then as you use more water, the rate goes up. So that discretionary use that people don't necessarily need, they're paying more for it. It's a very effective tools for utilities. Especially for, if you look here, for those red ones, using 1,000 gallons a day, that bill can get very expensive. So right now what we see happening is people install an irrigation well, and they're allowed to do that, and that is lost revenue for the utilities. They're no longer getting a price signal of a bill, and we no longer know how much is being used. So for water supply planning, we assume that they're just getting water from the utility, but now they've got another straw in the aquifer. This is something that local government, as Alachua County, we are preempted from. We believe that utilities can prohibit irrigation wells in new service agreements. We've seen this happen in Marion County on top of the rural neighborhoods. So as you are having those conversations with new developments, that it might be something that you want to consider. We did a little data analysis exercise. The area that's circled in red, that is GRU's water service area that is within Suwannee River Water Management District. And we think just in that small area, there's 150 irrigation wells. So this got Suwannee's attention. So they are actually looking at funding a study to try to account for how much water is being used in these wells. Because I imagine, there's obviously going to be some around High Springs, Newberry, Alachua, so a similar trend there. Finally, we have some grant-funded rebate programs. We received $220,000 from Suwannee River Water Management District for irrigation retrofits. So this is for existing systems. If people want to make changes, want to convert to Florida-friendly landscaping that doesn't need that water, they can get up to $2,000 per residential, $8,000 for commercial. We'd love to offer this program within High Springs. We'll just have to work with your utility to get some water use data so we know where we can target it, because we've seen that to really get the savings that the state's looking for with these dollars, you need to be reaching your high water users. We also got money from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for septic system upgrades, and this is for traditional systems to upgrade the drain field to ones that will remove nitrogen, which is one of the pollution sources of our springs and the river. So people could get a 50% rebate up to $5,000. So we will be reaching out to your utility department to figure out where sewer is going to be expanded, because we don't want to offer a rebate somewhere if a system's going to become offline. So the type of systems that it could fund is similar to what we did at Post Springs Park. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Sir?
We're moving to an AMI metering system. For when you look at this water use tool, is that something that we would feed, or could we connect to the county for you to follow up on that if we wanted to, or how does that data sharing work in terms of water use monitoring, or would we want it to potentially?
Yeah, it would absolutely could work with AMI, and I'd be happy to get you in contact with the University of Florida. It's the Program for Resource Efficient Community. I'll follow up with the city manager and get that contact. So I think it would be a contract that the city would have with the university, and they just created a new contracting mechanism that makes it very easy.
Automated meter reading. And I will say that program too, I think a big chunk of it is actually subsidized by the state, because they had an interest in making sure that all the utilities were starting to use systems like this to start tracking water use. So it's not an expensive thing. It's mainly about your ability to provide good data into the system so that they can do the analyses.
Yeah, it's pretty affordable, and it also could be something that we could possibly do a cost share program with. So, for example, we could do some outreach to high water users, and that would be the match, because I've talked to the state, and they're definitely interested in those types of things. Because I would like to remind you, Alachua County, we are not a utility, so our water conservation program is very unique, and I hope that you see us as a resource to help with any of your water conservation interests because our water doesn't follow the same political boundaries as we do. So we are always happy to help anyone in the county.
I have a quick question, if I may, please. You mentioned the annual irrigation inspection and audit. Is that just for commercial properties that's going to be required?
That's a wonderful question. Yes. So we considered, because in our voluntary tune-ups, we see so many leaks when we go out and look at people's irrigation systems. We considered requiring annual inspections be sent to the county for, across the board for all homes, but it just felt, that would be too much of a burden for all property owners. So this is just for the commercial sites.
And is that something that the county does, or is that something they have to contract with somebody to do?
They don't necessarily have to contract. It could be just something they do themselves. So basically they are running the system, looking for leaks, looking for overspray, and then just providing us some documentation that they did it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Stacy. Really appreciate it. All right. Last thing on our agenda, I see it, is for your staff. A community redevelopment agency expand. I don't know if that's you all.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the basically in 2021, we brought forward to y'all a new strategic plan, and there were 7 areas of focus, one being economic development, and one of the goals underneath that was to expand the CRA. So I'll just go over it. My presentation is very brief because I think everyone understands CRAs and why a city would want to expand. As looking at the map, the orange area is our existing CRA. It's bounded on the north by US Highway 441, to the east to 34th Street, to the south 184th Place, and to the west 239th Street. The expanded area is the green area, and it goes along 27, 187th Avenue to the north, 240th Avenue to the east, 184th and 185th Road to the south, and 246th Street to the west.
What are the numbers on that map? Sorry.
The numbers as far as the acreage and parcels, or?
No, all those little numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Those
7.
were, I did not include those in here. They were just businesses like the Grady House, the Peanut Mill, that sort of stuff that's in the CRA. So the currently, our current redevelopment area, it consists of 209 parcels, 107 acres. The proposed expanded area is 87 parcels, 58 acres added. The total would be, if y'all approved it, would be 296 parcels, 165 acres. So here are the numbers. The expanded CRA redevelopment area land use. It's a mixture of commercial, residential. There's no primary land use. But the total taxable value for our current redevelopment area this past fiscal year was $20,485,000. The expanded area would add an additional estimated $5,609,000, which would be a 21% increase in taxable value. So our current CRA budget is around $220 a year, so y'all contribute $110,000 of that. So a 20% increase would be around $22,000, but you're going to add more taxable value next year, so it'd be $25,000 to $30,000 if the county decided to approve this, and if the county decided to contribute. This is the land use mixture map. As you can see, our existing area has more commercial. Most of the commercial is in red, and the yellow is residential. So as you can see, most of the commercial along the expanded area is along 27. So the assessment, the main conditions seen in the area were blight and deteriorating buildings. And just to back up a little bit, the reason we chose this area for expansion, we weren't just going, hey, let's expand the CRA. I mean, it was because we received calls for people that have projects in the area, and we've had to say, sorry, not in the CRA area. Many of the people that are interested in the facade improvement program, and there has been a little bit of redevelopment along the roadway, and so we want to encourage it. And just continue the momentum that has already started. So the conditions are, like I said, mostly blight, deteriorated buildings. In addition, sidewalk issues, roadway issues. You can see that in there as well. So the dots on the map refer to the pictures of the assessment area. Again, here's some more pictures of the dilapidated structures and unsafe buildings. So the finding did meet the requirements by Florida statute to expand the area. The conditions that were found, again, were substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures leading to economic distress. The criteria of blight that has been met for the state statute was predominance of effective or inadequate layout, parking facilities, roadways, bridges for public transportation. There are several pictures in the report that showed the roadway issues, but I just didn't include them because I didn't want to make the presentation too long. Deterioration of site or other improvements, unsanitary or unsafe conditions. If you go down the roadway, it's easy to see the blight along the way. And we have people like the Grady House making investments, and we want to maintain their property values as well. So it's kind of protecting what we have and building on the momentum of the redevelopment taking place.
Thank you.
So basically, we'd like to in the future just have a discussion of whether that's something you would support or consider, and if you know, for us to bring forward at a future date.
Okay. Are there any comments from the board?
Yes, I've watched the CRA develop over the last 3 years, and it's been real exciting to watch the progress with the market area down there, the new trees planted on that space, and to see what's happening, you know, with this community as you build and strengthen the community. All the new growth, you know, I don't know if you all have any news on the peanut factory, or if you have any, you know, if there's anything movement on that.
Sold last month.
It did.
They're a
Okay.
holding company. They're gonna relist it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so at least there's action over there. Yes.
To resell.
Okay, and but a new restaurant in town as well. You know, so there are a lot of things that are going on here, you know, that maybe you could, you know, share with this board who may not even know that that's happening here.
Well, we've had the previous bank was changed into Chomper's drive-through. The Watershed restaurant. It currently was a vacant building that now has a restaurant in it. Today there was a ribbon cut-in for Prohibition Pizza. We've made, put new banners downtown, new landscaping downtown. We have installed new crosswalks with flashing lights. We're trying, because it's very dark down there, to try to make it safer. Currently, we put in for an appropriation for the Priest Theater for $1.2 million, and it does look pretty promising at this point. So we are still, you know, trying to see what we can do.
Is that located? That's not. Is that in the new CRA, the Priest Building?
Yeah, it's
that's
yeah, it's right near across from the brewery.
right across from Brewery. Right, okay.
Yeah, and it's currently vacant, and it's no one can go in there. It's condemned right now because there's some structural issues. So so we're still working on that. Let me see what else we've done so much. Can you think of anyone else? I can't hit. Those are, oh yeah, the farmers market is on the agenda for the upcoming CRA board to consider. We are looking to gather a community input process because to make it a little more geared toward, get some input. You assess your programs every so many years, see how you're doing, see what the community thinks, and potential changes that need to be made to make it, bigger and better and vibrant and have the types of vendors that people are seeking. So, likewise, the Heart of High Springs did their Wall Dog event with all the murals, as has been mentioned, and has been very, very well received. So, again, and we have a variety of other projects we're moving on. We've hit, I think, out of the 5 of the 7 focus areas this past year. So we're trying to continue to do projects and follow the plan.
Madam Chair. So, Madam Manager, so the CRA's got some history here. So who is operating, who is your administrator now? Do you have a CRA administrator, or are you doing it?
So currently, Bruce is the executive director.
Bruce, okay.
But we kind of tag team a little. But Amy Bohannon is our CRA manager. She just occupied the position in the last couple months. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to build more base data and demographic and psychodemographic information, the true numbers on the traffic counts, housing values, population, so that we can be more proactive in talking to investors regarding properties like the peanut mill. Yep. And so we're kind of trying to reestablish some of the base. And
I know we had extended the term of the CRA, right? Remind me where we are on that. I just forget.
In 2021, you extended it, I believe, for another 10 years. And so we're kind of still at the beginning of that extension.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk to my colleague. So there was a time where when I was on this board, I didn't know if the CRA was going to continue. And we worked extensively with, and I want to attribute that to you, Madam Manager, in getting that kind of worked out. I will also say that the expansion down a commercial corridor would be incrementally better because theoretically the value should increase at a higher rate. So I like just how y'all are even thinking about it. I love what you've been doing with the wall dogs and the brewery and those types of events. And from what I'm hearing, there's so much great things going on that I would be inclined to take a hard look and support it. I want to see the numbers, have our staff give us a briefing, but wasn't really expecting this. When I saw this, I was like, I wonder what they're doing. So I appreciate the presentation and really how y'all have kind of thoughtfully thought about how to reinvest in this corridor, which is, from my perspective, the entryway to Alachua County from our Columbia County. So, yeah, I would be inclined to support it if the numbers, work. I think it's probably more than a 20% increase because it's commercial.
Right.
But I also think it's, probably a really good investment for us as a county and certainly for the city of High Springs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that. I mean, I think I've been impressed to see what you've done in the short time that you've sort of revamped the CRA, and I come here a lot with my family to visit. We're big outdoor, so we really enjoy the trails and the springs, and spend a lot of time here. And as I'm driving, buildings are being and have thought, wow, someday when I dream to be an entrepreneur, it's nice. I pending number.
Thank you. We appreciate it. One reason why we're trying to build our base data and make it more accurate as far as what's really going on is to focus on the commercial corridor and let the people know of the opportunities and that we can support their businesses coming here. So.
Actually was, and this isn't related exactly to the CRA, but it actually ties in terms of tree planting. It's something that we didn't get on the agenda, but we did want to bring up to our local agreements with small cities for tree planting. And so if you don't mind, I would like to let Andy Chrisman just briefly talk about that with you all, because I think it will tie nicely into the work you're trying to do with landscaping. Andy, do you want to? I know, I'm sorry. I felt bad. I didn't mean to. I meant to bring this up earlier, but she got a joyful experience learning about all of our initiatives.
Thank you.
That's right. I know. And I told her it's her fault she didn't remind me, because she should have just said, and while I'm up here, next time, call the chair out. It's okay.
No. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor. Andy Chrisman, again, Program Manager with the Land Conservation Program. And I think many of you are familiar with one of our staff, our County Arborist, Lacey Holtzworth, who has been working extremely hard throughout Alachua County on tree planting projects, including some projects within High Springs in some of the area you're talking about. So, yeah, there's a handout at each person's space, and I do have a couple if anyone here is interested. Maybe we can pass it around or something. But basically, the one side of the handout that is the full county view is the orange-colored diamonds on that side represent all of the locations in the last 5 years where Lacey has been able to partner with the community and with the municipalities to establish trees as part of the county's tree planting program. And the other side represents the actual tree plantings that have occurred within High Springs in the past 5-year period. Looking forward now, and several of those trees have been on city property, and then additionally there's been plantings along County Road 340 heading to Post Springs along that nice new trail. So looking forward for the next 5 years to improve opportunities to partner and expand the green canopy in areas, especially areas where citizens could use shade and cooling opportunities, recreational areas, downtown areas. We are hoping to establish interlocal agreements between the county and each municipality that's interested and willing to do so to sort of unpave the way to more opportunities for Lacey to work with you in your local area to get more trees in the areas where you're interested in hosting them. So that's something that will be coming to you in a future High Springs City meeting if you're able to allow it to go on the agenda. And that's really the extent of the update. So.
Thank you. And again, my apologies for making you stay.
It was an interesting meeting.
She has to say that.
We've received so many compliments on the trees along Railroad Avenue, like all the time. So we really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, we have gotten through this agenda. So with that, I guess we'll open it up for public comment. Yes. All right. Well, we know you all sat through this meeting not just to hear us talk, so hopefully you have some things to share with us. It's always my favorite part of the meeting. Please come forward. You can state your name and let us know what you have for us.
Having me here tonight. It was a very interesting meeting to sit through. And I think that I can dovetail on a few of the things that were brought up here tonight. One is should be interesting to the Alachua County forever, as a goal of theirs is to protect our water resources here. I also was thinking that paying its fair share regarding the infrastructure. It made me think, yeah, all this new growth we've got coming here, that's something that's going to be, I think, important to one of the issues I'm going to bring up. The third thing was that we were still in conversations with the DEP. And then fourth was the critical infrastructure that needs to be maintained and repaired. So given that kind of introduction, I wanted to speak to this proposed utility district along I-75 and 236. I know a lot of people in our community were disappointed that it wasn't going to be on the agenda for tonight. So I wanted to come and at least express some of the concerns that I've been hearing. The theory is that by having this, well, I guess the background here is the Department of Environmental Protections has let the water sewer problems at the unfinished hotel there at that interchange. And so they're talking about an upgrade, and the citizens here are saying, you know, that really belongs to that county, those folks in that city thing, that the money that would be used to work with that is better spent right here in High Springs. Kind of in regards to the money, it's my understanding that we have acquired a DEP grant to put towards this goal. We're looking at $2 million to run the wastewater, $5 million to run the water lines. However, this is a project we don't need and we can't finish without borrowing more money. We have no engineering design and no estimates. And so the question would be, where then would we find that additional money? I just wanted to make the point, when I speak for a number of the people who asked me to come here and address this concern, that our infrastructure here, it was mentioned that we live over these springs. We are the best water resource for our entire country, right in this area where we live. We are one of 3 in the entire world that lives over this water source that we have underneath us. But our old infrastructure is making it difficult and for some people impossible to drink the water out of their taps. Our old pipes contain both asbestos and lead soldering. This is through much of our city. So when we talk about people paying their fair share and stuff like that, look, these people who are in these historic homes that are living on top of a gold mine but can't drink their water because the infrastructure is so bad, that the chorus seems to be, let's work with what we have here, the needs we have in our city, before we start talking about maybe taking on a new project or starting something that we can't finish. Let's put our people, our community here. And that's what I think that the people wanted to put out there to this committee, so that we've got a voice.
Thank you, ma'am. A comment? Please come forward and state your name. Sorry, I'm taking over your meeting. I apologize. Habit. I'm in habit now.
David Lynch, L-I-N-C-H. I'm going to give each person 2 pieces of paper.
Do you mind giving me an extra one so I can give my clerk a copy? Or you can give him yours. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. then, is that acceptable for you? 5 minutes?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do, okay. You running the timer? Yep. Oh, okay. Is there, yeah.
Okay, Exhibit
Is there
A.
Is there a time, I'm sorry, do you all have a time? You have a time for public comment? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Exhibit A is a statistic from the CDC. It shows that alcoholic beverages kill 380 people each day. And then the lower newspaper clipping is based on an interview with Harvey Ward. And he is saying, in effect, that he thinks that alcoholic beverages are one of the causes of the increase in traffic deaths in Gainesville. And he thinks there should be more education in regard to alcohol abuse. Exhibit B is from your website, What's Good Alachua County. And it shows that you are advertising 3 breweries on your website. Cypress and Grove, Black Adder Brewing, and Daft Cow Brewing. So the county is supporting and condoning, by the power of the state, a product that kills 380 people each day.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments?
Hi, my name is Nancy Piety. So I wanted to kind of echo what Janet here has to say. We're all in this community very disappointed that the utility district was not on tonight's agenda. And like her, I've been asked clearly from a different group of people to speak on their behalves as well. So I wanted to go ahead and correct the record on some items, as well as propose some questions to be answered for the community. First and foremost, we've been told repeatedly that the ordinance 2023-2 had to be passed in haste on 3/9 due to a timeline the city was up against. That was during the 3/9 meeting. Should be noted that that grant was submitted for on 7/11/2022. That is a full 8 months prior, which would have allowed for more than enough time for the community outreach that your community has said repeatedly should have been done to have been done. It was not. Second, there have been numerous inconsistencies stated on the record, omissions, and what I believe are out and out lies. Quote, there's a lot of packaged sewer plants on consent. This is not true. There is one at the visitor center that is on consent, and that would be their responsibility as a commercial entity to fix. Next, there are a number of property owners that really want water who have been requesting it for years. This true is untrue. This only speaks to commercial developments, not residences. And I have 425 signatures on a petition to back that up. It's been stated that the city is well within the state statute to establish, this district. This is a sleight of hand. While the city is within its rights of statute 180-2, allowed to establish this district, you cannot negate section 180.3, section 3, that requires you to have done studies that you have not done and which have not been made available to the public. This commission has not met those requirements. Additionally, we were told 2 times by 2 different people that Tallahassee wants all septic systems removed from the state of Florida and that they are developing legislation to that end. I personally called Representative Chuck Brannon's office and spoke with Elisa Bregman. She in turn shook every tree in Tallahassee to validate these statements and came up completely empty-handed. She did, however, contact Ben Glass, the Legislative and Government Affairs Chief for the Suwannee River Water Management District, who I've heard stated several times here tonight, who has stated this is a falsehood. They are not going after all septic systems in the state. By the way, there are 2.5 septic systems. 1 in 3 residences in the state of Florida is serviced by a septic system. Additionally, it should be noted that the community has expressed that this was modeled after the GRU legislation. Just yesterday, it passed through committee that GRU is going to have to turn over its board of governors and be governed by a board done by the governor, not through the city commission. If we continue to go down this route, I assure you, Chuck Brannon's office will be doing the exact same thing that Chuck Clemens' office has been doing for years to get that overturned. Lastly, and I think most importantly, we have heard repeatedly by more than one commissioner, more than the city manager, more than the assistant city manager, that development is coming whether we want it or not. Your community has stated emphatically and unequivocally they do not want this, period. Over and over and over again, they have told you this. So instead, in your own words, we might as well as give them a location and go ahead and put it there. Usher development up to that intersection. Keep them away from our core. Keep them away from coming down here. So instead of doing your jobs and actually working on zoning and fixing it so that you don't get caught with your pants down like you did in Bridlewood, you have sat and instead sold out your neighbors. That's my property up there. That's these people's properties up there. So instead of fixing what is broken down here, you're saying, oh, don't worry about it, not in my backyard. We'll send it somewhere else. I'm somewhere else.
Any other public comment?
Sorry. Just a couple quick questions. Why was the...
Your name, sir?
Eric Piety, thank you. Why was the utility district taken off the agenda for these past couple of meetings?
The agenda, we needed to have discussions with the county staff, so it wasn't at the point to put it on the agenda.
Okay.
It was too preliminary.
Yeah, understood. That's fair. In your discussions with the county, are you guys still considering, I think there's 3 items that kind of stood out to me, that draft map that was drawn up with the proposal to the map, where it just runs the corridor and then just the commercial property up on I-75. Also, the language of the ordinance that we looked at, I think a couple of meetings ago, where it basically took the responsibility for the residential properties that single-family owners would be exempt from it, and also the timing for announcements going from 10 days to something longer.
Okay, so I hope I get this all. So currently, we would be going back to first reading. The proposed ordinance would, the reason why, so we can pass an ordinance that would exempt the residents where it's voluntary hookup. Mm-hmm. It's not required. Again, it's all up to the commission, what they want to pass or not pass. Right. We'd need to create the utility district and pass that ordinance. So what were the other questions?
The map. Did a draft map that evening, basically took all the stuff out and did just the corridor and the commercial property of it.
Yes, so the proposed map, again, we want to refine it and look at it again, but the concept is to go up the corridor to the commercial area.
Okay. And then the length of time for notification, I think it's 10 days now. There was no firm days, but just extending that.
So I don't know if we picked an agenda that will go on yet. The plan is to just present the idea to the county at one of their meetings in May, because we haven't had a discussion with their commission yet. And then they need to see if it goes along with the requirements of their comprehensive plan and provide feedback, and based on their feedback, then we will decide if we'll come forward after that to do first reading with the ordinance that does not require hookup.
Okay, very good. And then one final question. Do you guys have any idea how much this project in total is going to cost? I know you've got 7 million or so.
So currently, the wastewater we have a grant for from DEP, and it's approximately $2.5 million. We have submitted a grant for the water. So the water was the one that is currently being considered. So the ordinance that that was said, that, you know, that was the one that was referred to back in 2022, the application, that wasn't for the ordinance we recently did first reading on, which was water.
Okay.
So that is, we're waiting to hear on that, and so it would involve the water line plus a water facility at the interstate for around 7 million is how much we're asking for.
Okay.
But again, the commission doesn't have to approve it. The county doesn't have to approve the creation of the utility district. So this is all just a process for consideration at this point.
So that's about a $2 million shortfall then?
There's not, I wouldn't say there's a shortfall yet. You don't know if there's a shortfall until it goes out to bid. The water grant is supposed to pay for everything but design. But, and this is common with several projects, that we will look for other sources for the design if this part of the water is approved. The wastewater is approved from the DEP for the design and construction, and DEO is who we're submitting the water grant with.
All right. And do you have any idea? I know you probably don't have an exact date, but do you have, you know, like end of May, into June, do you think you'll have this back on the agenda?
I anticipate May going to the county and then possibly going back to the commission in June.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam,
There was a lady here earlier this afternoon, she and her husband, and she asked if we were going to be discussing this with the 236 situation. And I told her no, because it was not part of our agenda. That does not mean that she would not have been able to say what she wanted to say during public comments, as we just did. But the two of them left, because I don't see her out there anymore. And saying that I didn't think we were going to discuss it because it wasn't here was the fact at the time. But I just don't want her to think that I purposely lied to her.
thank you, ma'am. Madam Mayor, do you mind if I ask if my staff could give most of us up here are not very aware of what this even is. I have like this much knowledge. I think she has about this much knowledge, and a couple of us have no knowledge. So if our staff could give us a...
And Madam Chair, yes, the High Springs staff has been talking with our staff, and they are not ready at this point to bring it to us. But Missy, I don't know if you have any update beyond that, other than there's been some preliminary conversation. We have a comp plan provision that provides, because they would have to cross unincorporated area with the line, so there are certain things that have to happen to cross that unincorporated area, and we're not at a point to bring that to the board yet. This is just very early discussions, which is why all of you all are kind of looking like you're not aware, because it hasn't reached a point where we're even talking to you all about it.
I guess yeah. It's
In fairness, too, I've been speaking with, I've had citizens call me specifically. I've had citizens call me specifically, and I've been talking to Commissioner Ambrose to try to get as much information as I could. So I am up on with this, but we haven't discussed it as a board, waiting for it to come to our board. But I do know, y'all, what we're talking about here, because I have heard from citizens who are concerned. And every time I get one, I call Commissioner Ambrose, who fills me in.
So how this transpired is a grant opportunity came up with DEP. Quite honestly, I think staff thought it would be great for the area were we to get it, because there's many benefits, such as, we're in a springs protection area, and moving people off of septic and getting them on a gravity line, means that it saves from nitrogen and other harmful chemicals going into the aquifer. So that was a reason. Another reason, I was told there were 2 commercial businesses up at the interstate on consent. It may be 1. But in addition, the hotel hasn't been able to develop. It's basically partially built in a blighted condition. And there's graffiti, and it's an unsafe building. So the thought process was to get the line out there to help clean up the intersection, because what surrounds us does impact the city of High Springs, and it impacts the quality of life too. So getting some development up to the intersection, and this is the helps provide us services, so we don't have to travel so far to get the things that we need, because it's not all provided in the rural communities. So due to that thought process, since we had received and we were awarded the grant for the wastewater, obviously it was common sense to go, well, we should try to do the water now too. So the DEO grant, it's based on job creation. So that's the economic development point of getting the line up to the interstate to support commercial growth. Along from the city limits up 236 to the 75 236 interchange.
Is it my understanding that if you run a wastewater line, anyone who's on that wastewater line has to connect? Is that?
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Yeah,
we have gone over this with our attorney, as well as the health department. If you read one of the first paragraphs of state statute, if you don't, it appears that way, but if you read farther down, then it does give the municipal authority to allow people to opt out. So that's misinformation. So at this point, we've had discussion with staff after we had the discussion about what goes on the agenda, and it was decided to inform y'all what was going on before we move any further, and try to see if you would support us in this endeavor. We were under a time constraint with the water, because as you know, there's a lot of funds for water and sewer right now that have never been before, and we don't always get told months in advance when this is coming. Again, this was a short turnaround grant that certain requirements had to be met in a very short time period, and I think we found out about the water grant 2 to 2.5 months before we had to pass certain things to apply. And so we decided to go ahead and do that. Again, we don't have to accept anything that's awarded, but we didn't want to miss out on an opportunity, and we wanted to, our stance is to bring opportunities to the commission and to the area, and it's up to y'all to decide if you want to support it or not. But I don't want there to be opportunities that we don't go after, and then you say, well, why didn't you do that, High Springs? So that's kind of where we stand.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess this will be a matter that comes before us at some other juncture. If we could make sure that that we get these folks' numbers so that they have the information about when it's going to be on our agenda, that would be great.
Madam Chair, so when it comes to you, that the folks that live out here would come to a county commission meeting to discuss.
Yes, ma'am.
But we'll have a conversation here before it goes to the county?
More than likely it will next go to the county before it came back to the city, but we can advertise when the county commission is so that people are aware,
Mhm.
you know, through social media and that sort of thing. We're not trying to hold back information or anything like that. But right now, it is more appropriate to go to the county before it comes back to the city.
And the welcome center out there that's been under consent, I asked, I'm not sure how many years it's been under consent order, but I think it's been quite some time. And I'm not sure why it is DEP hasn't been forcing them to upgrade their package plant. You know, I mean, it seems like they should have the ability to do that because their nitrogen discharge limit, they are. I've looked at their reports. There's a lot going out there. But interestingly enough, and this is kind of a little bit of a concern for me because we don't know where we're going, is I got a picture from somebody a couple of days ago, and the hotel that has been sitting dormant for many years has had a bunch of dirt delivered. Like they're planning on doing some kind of construction, and I'm not sure. It's a little bit concerning, you know, because they have said, as I understand from Ashley, that they would donate property for us to install water supply wells. So we would have a second water treatment plant there. Is that correct?
If the grant is approved, I mean, them putting dirt there has nothing to do with us. I mean, we haven't had any further conversation.
I didn't think it had anything to do with us, but it certainly would imply that they are ready to go forward with construction based on this. This may be a tipping point for them. I don't know. But, you know, one bit of data that I think would be important for us to consider here from the city perspective is O&M costs for Cross Creek. You can get that data from GRU. And that's a very expensive couple of wells for them to maintain for 40 residents down there. I think it's about 40 that they serve. And when we applied for the grant for the wastewater and the water, I think that we had put on there that we would anticipate hooking up about 40 on the grant application. But not hooking those up, as I understand from Ashley, doesn't mean we're not eligible for it, but that we may not hook those up. So, you know, if we have 2 gas stations and 1 well, O&M costs for those kind of hookups, it's pretty skewed. You know, I don't know how much revenue we would get from that. And I can tell you that I've received a ton of feedback from this from people along 236, and they showed up here in large numbers a couple weeks ago. Understandably frustrated because they're talking to us and they're like, you guys are making the decision for us. You don't represent us. So that's why they were so glad that you all were coming here because you are their guys.
When was that meeting that y'all discussed it?
Sorry?
When was the meeting that y'all discussed it?
It was a couple weeks ago. The 9th was when the vote happened. Yeah, it was almost a 5-hour meeting. It was a long one. Yeah.
Spread it all over Facebook, and then everybody came down here. It was almost like, oh, well, you missed the meeting when you're going to be now annexed into the, you know. And so that's what happened on March 13th when all the people. Was that the date?
I'm not sure, but it was fairly soon after that.
The 9th and then again on the 23rd.
Okay. So it was recent, very recent.
The 9th was the passing of ordinance 2023.2 for the first read, and then the 23rd was a request to change our city ordinances for required hookups, which was not acted upon.
Okay.
Instead ended in tabled.
So in the meeting where the ordinance passed for first reading, so that ordinance had the required hookup because that hookup was what is required for people in the city. When we received feedback from the community, from the people in the county, they don't want to be hooked up. At the following meeting, we had a proposed ordinance that said they do not have to hook up. And so we were listening to the people living in the county.
Yeah, no other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment, right, ma'am? Okay. All right, I have on my agenda county commission comments, so I will start down here and we'll work our way this direction.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for having us and to hear your issues and your concern to take under consideration for the future, especially with the CRA. And I think that that's important. One of the most important thing is when you talked about blight, and I'm one of those guys that like to fix blight. and make the area better. So, so thank you for all of your information that you all have shared with us tonight. Thank you.
I want to thank y'all too. Thanks for hospitality. You know, I said at another joint meeting that the effectiveness of us as electeds really is dependent on largely how well our staff works with your staff. And I've seen in the last couple of years a real improvement, at which I want to say kudos to you, Madam Mayor, and to your commissioners. You've got a great staff that seems to work on issues that are best for our citizens. You know, the radio system is an obvious one, roads is an obvious one, parks is an obvious one. This last thing that just came up is concerning to me. I am an anti-sprawl person, and when I look at the map, there's a lot of unincorporated, so I will get informed and I will speak to you all and weigh in on that, because on the surface I am, you know, we like cities because cities are where you improve infrastructure and you provide services at a very cost-effective way to your taxpayers. When you start sprawling out, somebody ultimately has to pay, and it's usually the taxpayers. So I'd like to understand kind of the thinking. I understand state money, but all state money is not good if it incurs costs. Now, if there's some environmental stuff going on that we as a county should be addressing with the state, I'm all for that. If there's a package plant that's leaking into y'all's water system, and I mean, we've got I'm going to say it, the best EPD department, and probably one of the only ones that's in from the coast. So that's a resource that as a county we can provide, and let's address that. I'm also a big proponent of we take care of our existing taxpayers before we start making priorities for the folks that want to move into our state. And so that's why I brought up impact fees. And I'm all for growth if they pay for themselves. I'm also for growth as long as they don't impact the people that I currently represent that elected me. So those are the kinds of issues that I think about when I hear about this kind of an issue. And I will certainly dig in, and I want to speak to each of you all because you know, you all obviously have a lot more information than me, but if a lot of citizens in the unincorporated are hollering at their county commissioners who represent them, I'm going to listen to them. That's who I represent. And I also represent your citizens that this will impact. So thank you all for bringing it up. And I know it's not ready for prime time. I'm not saying it should have been on the agenda, because until, you know, everybody has all the information, I don't want to deal with a little bit of information, but now I know, so I'll start to dig in. Thank you. And thank y'all for tonight.
Yes, thank you for tonight. I'm really glad to be here and proud to be able to share with my fellow commissioners the work that you all are doing up here. I have a lot of faith in this commission up here, and I've enjoyed working with you these almost 5 years, and excited and proud of what you've been able to do. So, you know, going forward, I'm hoping these people get the same information and have the opportunity to hear what it is that you're trying to do up here that I've had. And I appreciate your efforts, and I'm really excited. I tell you, I was in Citra tonight, or this afternoon, with training up there, and that was one of the reasons I was late. But I wanted to make sure that I was here as a part of your community, because I feel so much at home here, and I'm really glad to be a part of the efforts you are making here. So thank you all very much for letting me show you off.
I'll echo my colleagues. Thank you for the hospitality and the time. I think it was a great meeting overall, and much like Commissioner Cornell, I'm an anti-sprawl gal. Cities are there to create enhanced services and density for people to live, so that our natural areas and our rural areas can remain natural and rural. So I will also dig in on this a bit and listen to what the public has to say, as well as sort of the reasoning behind why this was brought forward. And I also echo our EPD being out there. I know, in fact, we actually have some funds available, I think, even for septic system upgrades to more enhanced and advanced systems to help protect our springs and water bodies. So I don't know if this area qualifies for that funding or not, but it's definitely something we can get information to you all about. And we just really appreciate all the time and energy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
think it's gone long enough, so I'm gonna keep my comments to myself. But thank everybody for coming up and putting through with it all.
Wait, you don't want to stay here longer?
Good man, Tristan.
Thank you for coming out here. We feel kind of like we're on the outskirts, and it's really nice to have you guys here and listen to the folks that are here. It's really important to us as well. And may I just recommend, Madam Chairwoman, as you're considering the CRA expansion, on Saturdays and Sundays, you can make reservations to have breakfast at the Grady House. You're not going to find a more delicious work of art. I've taken my family there. I've got an egg allergy. I've got a vegetarian. Everything. She takes it all into consideration. And she's right at the mouth right there where you know, if we could get that blighted area beyond her looking as beautiful as that is, no telling what we could do. So I highly recommend her brunches, though.
I've heard that too. I've heard that too.
You must know I'm a foodie in the way to my heart.
So I want to thank you guys for coming out on tonight and for the work you have worked with us so far. Thank you so much. I can remember the days that I ain't gonna say what I want to say.
It was different.
Yeah, it was different. Good way of putting it. Very it was different. It was different. That's why I don't have any hair on my head now, because of some of the meetings we used to have with the county. But I want to say thank you for working with us, and also I want to invite you guys back to High Springs. You can pass it down to 3. Not just for a meeting, but come out for a weekend of fun here in High Springs, huh? Yeah, invite you guys out for a day you won't have to relax and enjoy yourself. So again, we say thank y'all for coming out on tonight. Looking forward to working with y'all.
Quickly, this Saturday is also your soil collection.
Yes, the soil
ceremony,
collection this
isn't it?
Saturday at Catherine at 10.
At 10 a.m. Yeah. So for the public's information.
Yeah, I don't think
it's,
myself.
At 10 a.m. at Catherine Taylor Park, if you're interested in soil collection ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Myself and Commissioner Chestnut probably won't be there due to business.
Thank you all.
I'll be there.
You coming?
Too.
Okay, good.
I'll be there too.
I have no funeral.
Oh, so I can't say that.
You better knock on some wood.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. I'm gonna miss you
I'll
guys.
be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We are adjourned.
Oh.
No? Okay.
You got
Oh,
two
I'm
more.
sorry. You got 2 more.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Just for the community to put on their calendars, that strategic planning meeting that Ashley mentioned is May 23rd. Last time we did one, very few members of the community came and no members of the media came. So let's get the word out there this time. But it'll be here in the chamber at 6:30 on the Tuesday the 23rd.
Yeah, I need to double check the time. Angela, what time is it going to be? Do you remember?
It's
5:30.
Okay, 5:30?
Yeah, I think
All right.
she's right, yeah.
Okay. So that's all I had at this point, and I'm glad we have a new business in town.
Well, for me, I too would like to say thank you for coming and joining us in this meeting tonight. We got some good information, some things that we needed to know, some things we did not know. So I too, thank you.
I was asked to just share one other piece of information, and that is that on June 2nd, we're going to be having a climate summit. It is going to be at Cuskawilla, and so right off of 441 on your way to Micanopy. And the idea is to have kind of a fair atmosphere where we'll have lots of vendors and organizations that are doing work on climate change and provide information to the public about ways that they can lessen their impact on the environment and learn about what the county is going to be doing as we move forward with beginning climate action planning. So if you're interested in that, that's June 2nd, and I believe it starts at 5 p.m. I think 3 to 5 is the nitty-gritty, detailed data stuff with all the elected officials. So if you're into climate change and you're a wonk, show up at 3. If you're more interested in the fun and family activities and information, I believe that begins at 5.
You know if the pool will be open yet then?
I don't know.
Well, it is open to the public. I don't know if it'll be open by then or not, but.
I'm not sure, because that's camp during the week, so I'm not sure we have lifeguards.
It won't start that early, camp won't.
Actually, we have time to get the next weekend.
Right.
Ooh, ooh.
All right.
All kinds of fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. All right, that everybody? Anybody got anything else